He wasn't just cheating. He wasn't just lying. His secret was so twisted, so dangerous. It would drag his own family into a nightmare of crime, fear, and survival. To anyone looking from the outside, Lissa's marriage seemed picture perfect. She and her husband, John, had built a life many would envy. A cozy home, 2 beautiful children, and a kind of chemistry that made neighbors smile whenever they saw the couple together. John was the type of man people trusted easily. Charming, polite, always willing to lend a hand. At family gatherings, he was the life of the party. At work, he was respected. And with Lissa, he was attentive and loving, or so it seemed. But behind that perfect picture, a storm was slowly brewing. One that Lissa couldn't yet see, but one that would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about her husband. It didn't happen overnight. The unraveling came in small, almost invisible moments. John started coming home late, always with the same excuse: work. At first, Lissa believed him. After all, who doesn't want to support their partner chasing success? But then came the shifts in his behavior. His phone was always glued to him, even at dinner. He flinched when she asked simple questions, snapping in frustration. His warmth began to fade, replaced by cold distance. At times, Lissa brushed it off. He's stressed, she told herself. Maybe I'm just overthinking. But her gut whispered otherwise. A mother's instinct, a wife's intuition. And it grew louder with each passing day. The night that changed everything started like any other. Dinner, dishes, John retreating to the shower, humming a tune like he always did. But on the counter, his phone lit up. Buzz. Another notification. And another. Lissa stared at it. She never snooped. Not once in their years of marriage. But something inside her, something unshakable, told her to pick it up. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the screen. And then the truth poured out. Message threads, photos, conversations dripping with betrayal, words that cut deeper than any blade. John wasn't just distracted. He was living a double life. Lissa's breath caught in her throat. Her knees buckled beneath her. Everything she thought she knew about her husband shattered in an instant. The bathroom door creaked open. Steam rolled out. John, with a towel around his shoulders, stepped into the room, carefree, humming, until his eyes landed on Lissa. She stood frozen, clutching his phone, her face pale, her eyes filled with hurt. John stopped in his tracks. His smile disappeared. "Lissa," he muttered, his voice cracking. Her lips trembled as the words fell out, barely a whisper. "John, how could you?" The silence was deafening. John tried to speak. Half-formed excuses, desperate explanations. But every word only sounded like another lie. The mask he had worn for years was gone. The man standing before her wasn't her husband, not the one she thought she married. He was someone else entirely. Someone who betrayed her in the cruelest way possible. And for Lissa, nothing would ever be the same again. At first, Lissa thought it was just infidelity. Messages, photos, a mistress. That alone was enough to destroy her world. But as she scrolled deeper into John's hidden life, the truth grew darker. His double life wasn't just about another woman. It was about deception on a scale she couldn't fathom. Money transfers, secret accounts, disturbing conversations that hinted at dangerous ties. John wasn't just cheating. He was risking everything. Their family's stability, their children's future, and Lissa's safety. Her hands shook as she pieced it together. The husband she thought she knew wasn't just unfaithful. He was a stranger living under her roof. Lissa's mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was every smile, every kiss, every promise a lie? The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was physical, financial, and deeply personal. The life she built, the foundation of her marriage, was crumbling beneath her feet. John begged her to listen. He swore it wasn't what it looked like, but the evidence was undeniable. His phone was a confession he could never take back. And for Lissa, the pain cut even deeper because she realized she had ignored the signs for months. Every late night, every sudden mood swing, every defensive answer. The truth had been knocking, and she hadn't wanted to open the door. Now the door was wide open, and she couldn't close it again. Lissa sat awake that night long after John had left the room, her mind spiraling. She wasn't just a wife betrayed. She was a mother. Every decision she made now would affect her children. Could she stay, pretending things could be fixed, knowing the man beside her had shattered her trust beyond repair? Or should she walk away, start over, protect her children from the shadow of their father's sick secret? The choice felt impossible. Love, loyalty, anger, and fear wrestled inside her. But deep down, Lissa knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the future of her family. The next morning, Lissa looked at John across the breakfast table. He tried to act normal, buttering toast, sipping coffee, avoiding her eyes. But she saw him differently now. The mask was gone, and with every glance at her children, innocent, unaware, her resolve grew stronger. She didn't raise them to live in a home built on lies. She didn't want them growing up believing that betrayal was something to accept. In that moment, Lissa made her decision. Quietly, firmly, she would no longer be silent. She would no longer let John's secret define her life. The next steps wouldn't be easy. Confrontations never are. But one thing was certain. Lissa was ready to take back control. When Lissa finally confronted John again, there was no trembling in her voice, no hesitation in her eyes. She had spent the night replaying everything she discovered, and now the weight of truth gave her strength. "John," she said firmly, "I know everything. No more lies. No more excuses." John's face drained of color. He tried once more to weave excuses, to plead, to promise change. But Lissa had heard enough. Every word out of his mouth sounded hollow, a desperate attempt to cling to the life he had already destroyed. For the first time in their marriage, Lissa held all the power. She wasn't begging for answers. She wasn't crying for love. She was demanding accountability. And John, he had none to give. What followed was chaos. John lashed out, desperate to maintain control. He blamed work stress. He blamed temptation. He even tried to blame Lissa herself. But Lissa didn't flinch. For years she had supported him, trusted him, loved him without question. And this was how he repaid her. Family members began to take sides. Some couldn't believe John was capable of such betrayal. Others urged Lissa to forgive, to save the marriage. But forgiveness wasn't the issue. The real issue was that the man she thought she married no longer existed. The fallout wasn't just a collapse of a relationship. It was the death of an illusion. One morning, as her children played in the living room, Lissa packed a suitcase, not for herself, but for them. She realized staying wasn't an act of love. It was an act of fear, and she refused to let fear raise her children. She walked out of that house with her head held high, not because she wasn't broken, but because she knew healing was possible only outside those walls. John called. He begged. He threatened. He cried. But Lissa didn't answer. She had made her choice, and for once in her life, the choice was about her own survival. Lissa's story isn't just one of betrayal. It's one of strength. It shows us that even the people we love most can harbor secrets so dark, they change the course of our lives forever. But it also shows us something greater. The resilience of mother, the power of truth, and the courage it takes to rebuild. In the end, Lissa didn't just discover her husband's sick secret. She discovered her own strength. And that is the ultimate lesson. Because sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is walk away. And sometimes walking away is what saves you. Lissa thought leaving John meant freedom. She thought walking away from betrayal was enough. But she soon learned that secrets don't die just because you leave. John wasn't finished with her. He lingered in the background like a shadow she couldn't escape. Late night calls. A car she didn't recognize parked outside her building. Neighbors whispered that they'd seen him lurking. And in her gut, Lissa knew this wasn't love. This was obsession. The cracks in John's perfect facade began to widen. Lissa stumbled across bank statements, documents, and hidden transactions while preparing for court filings. What she saw terrified her. This wasn't just betrayal. It was evidence of fraud, extortion, and dangerous dealings with people who lived outside the law. John wasn't just her unfaithful husband. He was living a double life that could destroy them all. And by leaving him, by prying open his secrets, Lissa realized she had made herself a threat to him, desperate to protect her children. Lissa turned to the law. She filed for a restraining order, custody of the kids, and reported John's behavior to the authorities. But John was cunning. In court, he played the victim. He painted Lissa as unstable, unfit, and manipulative. He lied with ease, turning judges and lawyers into pawns in his twisted game. What should have been justice felt like another prison. Each hearing drained her, yet Lissa refused to break. She fought not just for her dignity, but for the safety of her children. Then came the night that changed everything. Through her lawyer, Lissa gained access to more of John's hidden files. And buried deep within them was something darker than infidelity, darker than fraud. John had ties to dangerous people. People who wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened their empire. And now, Lissa was in their line of sight. Her husband's sick secret wasn't just a betrayal of marriage. It was a doorway into a world of danger that could consume her entire family. For Lissa, the nightmare was no longer just about losing her husband. It was about staying alive. The first threat came as a note slipped under Lissa's apartment door. No name, no signature, just 6 words written in thick black ink. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Her stomach turned cold. This wasn't John's handwriting. It was someone else's. Within days, she noticed a pattern. Her car keyed, strange men watching from across the street. Her children's school reporting a man loitering near the gates. What began as intimidation was quickly turning into something much more dangerous. One evening, as Lissa returned from work, she froze at the sight of John waiting at her door. He leaned casually against the wall, as though nothing had happened. "Liz," he said softly, almost pleading, "you don't know what you're getting yourself into. Come back home. It'll be safer for everyone." But Lissa could hear the menace beneath his words. This wasn't a plea. It was a warning. He wasn't asking her to return out of love. He was demanding silence. And in that moment, she realized John wasn't just dangerous because of his secrets. He was dangerous because he believed she could destroy him. The legal battle grew uglier. John filed countersuits, trying to drag Lissa through endless hearings. Every court date was another performance, with John portraying himself as the wounded husband while painting Lissa as unstable. But behind the polished mask, his grip was slipping. Investigators began to uncover more of his criminal ties. And with every discovery, John grew more desperate. Friends warned Lissa to leave town, but she refused. Running would mean letting him win. Running would mean surrendering her children's future. Instead, she braced herself. The walls were closing in, but not on her, on him. The breaking point came late one night, when a brick crashed through her window, landing just feet from her children's beds. Attached was another note, this one even clearer. "Shut your mouth, or we'll shut it for you." For Lissa, this wasn't fear anymore, it was war. She called the police, handed over every file, every document, every piece of evidence she had gathered against John. And as investigators dug deeper, one thing became terrifyingly clear. John's downfall was imminent. But until he was behind bars, Lissa and her children were in grave danger. The investigation reached its peak. Police raided storage units John had secretly rented. Inside were documents, burner phones, and records tying him to money laundering schemes that stretched across state lines. His double life unraveled publicly. The man who once posed as a devoted father and loving husband was now exposed as a manipulator, fraudster, and criminal. Yet even as the evidence piled against him, John refused to admit defeat. He still believed he could silence Lissa before the truth buried him. The confrontation came on a rainy evening. Lissa had just picked up her children when she noticed headlights in her rear-view mirror, bright, relentless, following her every turn. Her heart pounded as she pulled into a police station parking lot. And there he was, John, stepping out of his car, his face pale with rage and desperation. "Why are you doing this, Lissa?" he shouted across the lot. "You're tearing our family apart." But this time, Lissa didn't tremble. She stood firm, her children safely inside the building, as officers swarmed out to restrain him. The mask was gone. John wasn't a husband, wasn't a father. He was a man consumed by his own lies, cornered by the truth he could no longer control. In court, The weight of evidence was overwhelming. John was convicted not just for fraud, but for harassment, intimidation, and endangerment. Lissa sat quietly in the courtroom as the judge delivered the sentence. John's eyes searched for hers one last time. Cold, bitter, unrepentant. But Lissa didn't flinch. She wasn't his prisoner anymore. She was free. The gavel fell, sealing John's fate. Life after John was not easy. Lissa carried scars, emotional, financial, and personal. But she also carried strength she never knew she had. Her story became more than a tale of betrayal. It became a warning that sometimes the people closest to us hide the darkest secrets. And yet, it was also a story of resilience. Of a mother who fought not just for survival, but for justice. Lissa's journey showed that even in the face of obsession, intimidation, and danger, truth and courage could still prevail. For her, the nightmare was over. For society, the lesson was clear. Silence only feeds the darkness, but speaking out can set you free. By the time the brick crashed through Lissa's window, it was clear. This was no longer just a broken marriage. John's lies, his obsession, and his criminal ties had spiraled into something far more dangerous. The raids, the courtroom battles, and the final confrontation all led to John's downfall. His empire of lies collapsed, and the mask he had worn for years was stripped away for the world to see. John's story was never just about betrayal. It was about the darker truth that danger often hides in plain sight. What began as lies and secrecy grew into obsession, intimidation, and crime, and it nearly cost Lissa her life. Her courage to speak out reminds us that abuse doesn't always start with violence. It begins with control, with manipulation, with small cracks that, if ignored, widen into something far more destructive. This case exposed how abusers can twist the legal system, how easily truth can be buried, and how urgently society must reform and protect the vulnerable. But Lissa's strength also showed us something greater, that even in the face of fear, resilience can prevail. For her, the nightmare is over. For the rest of us, it leaves a lasting lesson. To recognize the signs, to listen when victims speak, and understand that silence only feeds the darkness. Because in the end, the only way to break the cycle is to shine a light on the truth. Asterisk. Sometimes the monster isn't a stranger, it's the person sleeping right beside you. She thought she knew her husband, until his sick secret turned her life into a nightmare. What would you do if you uncovered something like this? Backhand index pointing down, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you want more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload.